Alrighty, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Learn to Defend Cyber. My name is Joseph, and today we're going to be working on Tryhackme's cyber kill chain and unified kill chain rooms. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. Alright, let me grab the browser capture real quick, and we'll jump right into it. So we're going to talk about the cyber kill chain, unified kill chain. I have used, I know of the cyber kill chain if you've taken your Security Plus or your CYSA Plus, or your CC, you have heard at least of the cyber kill chain. Unified kill chain is kind of a new one to me. I haven't heard of this one as much, so I'm excited to kind of dive into that. But let's talk about the cyber kill chain first. Now, this concept is originally thought of by Lockheed Martin. I'm sure, yep, thanks to Lockheed Martin, says it right here in the room. We're gonna go through this anyways because they always ask their questions on everything in here. You can see the different phases listed out: recon, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, installation, command and control, actions on objective. Yes, it is a lot of steps. It's a lot to remember. I'm a big fan of mnemonics. I don't know if anybody else is. I came up with one. It's kind of silly, but you know, it got the job done of remembering the different phases. I said, really wicked dinosaurs eat ice cream always. So that's your RWDEICA. I kind of just lumped command and control despite it being two C's into one C. Alright, so what is the kill chain? The kill chain takes this idea of a cyber attack, or what an attacker is going to be wanting to do, and gives you a visual, kind of a timeline, so to speak, to help you with figuring out what an attacker may be doing when they are in your environment, or where they may be when you discover them, right? So if you take a look at the concept that we always used with NIST, protect, what is it? Protect, respond, and detect. Yeah, it's like detect, respond, recover. You know, they have that big identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Those are the 5 phases. You always have that images. The CSF framework over here, you can see many different pictures of it, right? So when we are using the kill chain, we're kind of in that detect and respond phase, right? And it's a matter of figuring out where in the kill chain we might be detecting malicious activity, right? So we're going to go into this a little bit more through the different tabs here, but attackers are going to be doing different things in different phases. Reconnaissance, you're probably least likely to figure out that you have an attacker doing anything in the recon phase. Most reconnaissance is going to happen passively. You might have some active reconnaissance. By the way, passive reconnaissance, that's going to be looking at like Facebook profiles, LinkedIn profiles, going through the website and just, you know, looking around the website, reading the About Us area, gathering information, intel on your target, wherever that may be. Where active is going to actually be that like device fingerprinting and scanning devices, scanning the web page. Some may argue that crawling a web page is more passive than active, but that generates logs that could technically be detected, so I always lump it into active. Your mileage may vary, but you're least likely going to pick up on an attacker in this phase because they are usually doing things that are just normal, right? People visit your profile all the time on LinkedIn. You don't know if that's an attacker or not, especially if they're using what is called a sock puppet, which is just a fake account that looks real. And, you know, they visit your profile, they look around, they see if you're posting any juicy intel on where you work, like, hey, we use this software, we use this. Like, oh, you know, on LinkedIn, it's a job platform as much as it is a social media. You might list that you work at a role at Microsoft, right? And you're experienced with Microsoft Sentinel and Azure, and maybe you use, I don't know, like ThreatLocker or some other third-party app, and now they know that these things are in your environment, and this is something they can take advantage of, right? This is all, it's most likely going to go undetected. If it's not until they start poking and prodding your environment with scans that you're probably going to be detecting any of this. Then you have weaponization. All right, this weaponization phase is where they start to craft their malware. Now, one thing I will try and harp on as we go through this is that the chain is a chain for depiction of trying to figure out what phase an attacker may be in, and that's great. But attacks don't really happen in a chain. Attacks are more cyclical, right? And I think Microsoft kill chain. Thank you, Jerry, for showing me this. He actually has this like OODA loop style iterative cycle, right, where they get the internal recon, and then this just happens over and over and over again until they get to wherever they need to go, right? The action on objective, the objective really determines what phases are going to be touched on the most and whatnot. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I'm not going to break down every single one because that's what these tabs are here for, and we want to walk through the room. So we already talked about this, right? The kill chain. We talked about the different phases. We haven't talked about them in depth, but we're going to. All right. Thanks to Lockheed Martin Global Security Company, they established the kill chain framework for the cybersecurity industry in 2011 based on military concept. All right. It defines the steps used by adversaries to succeed. An adversary may need to go through all phases. We will go through the attack phases to help you understand adversaries and their techniques. Why is it so important? I did kind of touch on it, right? But we can kind of read it right here. Cyber Kill Chain will help you understand and protect against ransomware attacks, security breaches, APTs. The Cyber Kill Chain is going to really help you protect against any kind of attack. Those are probably your main threats in bold quotation marks, but the kill chain is really great for us to be able to figure out where an attacker is in their attack lifecycle, right? So if you see them installing stuff, you know that they're in this installation phase. Maybe they don't have command and control established yet. Maybe they're installing their command and control right now. If they're exfilling data and they're crawling around your environment, doing lateral movement and whatnot, you would have the command and control phase and that actions on objective phase kind of blended there. It's a great way of figuring out where an attacker is, where they're going to be going, what their next objective may be, what they may have already done, and containing the activity, getting them out of the environment, and overall just handling an incident with honestly better ease because you're able to visualize and understand their objectives. All right, we talked about the different phases. We can go ahead and click complete, go on to the next task. We're going to look at reconnaissance. So reconnaissance, I did talk about this already. OSINT, also known as open source intelligence, is that kind of that concept I was talking about, right? You have attackers going through and trying to find different information about the company, its employees, maybe the size, email addresses, phone numbers, anything. Like if you've been a part of a data breach before, your information's on the internet, they can find it, they're going to look it up. Like if your company has been breached in the past, that means that your internal like naming convention is probably exposed at some point. They know how to go through and find information on the company so they can have a better idea of who they're attacking. Now, do all attacks happen where they're doing intense recon on a target? No. There's a lot of automated attacks, and there's a lot of just attacks of opportunity, right? A new 0 day comes out. That's a vulnerability that hasn't been patched. And there's a proof of concept out, and it's really easy to exploit. People will create bots that just fire this exploit at whatever, and if they get a foothold, they start going in the environment, and it's not until they're already stealing the data that they figure out who they hit. So we have a scenario here. A person who names himself Megatron decides to conduct a very sophisticated attack that he's been planning out for years. He studies and researches different tools that could help him get to the last phase of the cyber kill chain, but first he needs to start from the reconnaissance phase. So there are different tools that you could use for reconnaissance, right? It could be as simple as I said earlier, just navigating to people's social medias, maybe the company page on LinkedIn. But there's tools like the Harvester, which gathers emails, names, subdomains, IP addresses, URLs, all from public data sources. Hunter.io, email hunting tool that lets you obtain contact information associated with domains. So maybe if like you have a domain established, you would be able to use Hunter.io to go in and see like who maybe the admins were that set up that domain, or what like main emails were associated with the domain in general. What's going on, Jenny Housey? Welcome. OSINT framework. So this OSINT framework provides the collection of OSINT tools based on various categories. It's pretty neat. So it sounds like a one-size-fits-all. You can just go there and see what different tools there are. All right, and we talked about social media right here. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. If somebody has a profile on it, you can go and view it. That is the point of social media. What is the name of the Intel gathering tool that is a web-based interface to the common tools and resources? So that's going to be that OSINT framework. All right, what is the definition for the email gathering process during the stage of reconnaissance? That's that email harvesting that they have like oddly tiny right here. I don't know why they have it like that, but that's email harvesting. If I can type. All right, so let's kind of review a little bit, right? Reconnaissance phase. There's active and there's passive reconnaissance. Passive reconnaissance is going to be more, you can break it down into two camps pretty easy, right? Passive reconnaissance means I'm not interacting with the target. If I am trying to do recon on John Smith's environment and John Smith, if I just go and look at whatever he posts on the internet, that's passive. Right? I'm not having to do any scans on any devices. I'm not doing anything that would technically generate a log, at least of worth. Active reconnaissance is when you actually start poking and prodding the environment. You're starting to touch that firewall. You're starting to touch the servers, trying to figure out what they are, right? So that's your big breakdown between active and passive reconnaissance. So let's go on to weaponization. So weaponization, Megatron would work on crafting a weapon of destruction. So this is going to be their malware, whatever they're using. He would prefer not to interact with the victim directly, so they're going to create a weaponizer that, according to Lockheed Martin, combines a malware and an exploit into a deliverable payload. Most attackers usually use automated tools to generate malware, or refer to dark web to purchase malware. Yeah. Most sophisticated actors are going to make their own malware to make the malware sample unique and evade detection, right? We've talked about this in the past, but if you're doing signature-based detections and something is brand spanking new and it's never been used before, well, there's no signature that's been picked up, which means you're not gonna be able to detect this until it's probably too late. All right. So malware is a program or software that's designed to damage, disrupt, and gain unauthorized access to a computer. Exploits are the program or code that takes advantage of a vulnerability or flaw in a application or system. Payloads being the malicious code an attacker runs on a system. Megatron chooses to buy an already written payload from somebody on the dark web. The weaponization phase, an attacker could make an infected Microsoft Office document with a macro or some Visual Basic They could create a payload with a sophisticated worm, put it on USBs, and just start dropping them in parking lots. That's a fun one. An attacker would choose command and control techniques for executing commands on the victim machines to deliver more payloads. And they would select whatever backdoor they're going to be using. So that is our different things that might happen in the weaponization. So you basically think of weaponization as the phase where they're basically getting their malware, preparing their exploits, right? They're not quite in the environment yet, but they're getting their tools ready. This term is referred to as a group of commands that perform a specific task. You can think of them as subroutines or function that contain the code that most users use to automate routine tasks. But malicious actors tend to use them for malicious purposes and include them in Microsoft Office documents. Can you provide the term for it? We talked about it right up here. It is a macro. Anybody that's ever played an MMO before might know what a macro is. Basically just a set of actions that happen every time something happens, right? It's kind of, you open the document, then code fires. That's a macro. Does that come on screen when I do that? I don't think it does. Nope. Alright, cool. So, on to the next one, we have the delivery phase. So, we are almost halfway through the kill chain. We have another phase before we're halfway. But so far, you're getting this idea, right? You're not going to really prepare your tools until you've done recon. And that recon may be just figuring out that there is a widely available vulnerability, and that recon may be down to the last time a person went to the dry cleaners. It really depends on your objective, your scope, and what may be happening, right? Delivery phase. So this is self-explanatory. Delivery phase is delivering the malware. This can be done through phishing emails. This can be done through distributing infected drives. This could be done through ARP spoofing, also known as DNS poisoning. This can be done through a watering hole attack, where this one's actually a really good one to point out. Watering hole attacks, if you're taking your Security Plus, your CYSA, you're going to want to know what the watering hole attack is. It is attack targeted to, or it's a targeted attack designed to aim for a specific group of people by compromise a website that you're usually visiting. So if you know that like 123 medical place always goes to a Starbucks that's like down the road from them, you could compromise that specific Starbucks website. Well, let's not use Starbucks, because you would have to compromise all of Starbucks more than likely. But let's say they have a local coffee shop that has a website, right? And you could compromise that website and deliver malware that way. That's basically what a watering hole attack is. The attacker would encourage the victims to visit the website by sending quote-unquote harmless emails pointing out the malicious URL to make the attack work more effectively. They visit the website, the victim would unintentionally download malware, maybe automatic, maybe they have to click something. It's called a drive-by download. I'm sure people have seen it before. An example may be a malicious pop-up asking to download a fake browser extension. Right, browser extensions are actually pretty crafty. Not many people are looking for them, and the ones that are have troubles doing it, from my experience at least. There's so many browser extensions out there that determining whether one is malicious or not, you have to dig into each and every single one of them. I mean, I'm sure you can go and like find, if it's blatantly malicious, then it's going to have a record somewhere, probably on Virus Total or something similar, saying, hey, don't download this. The USB drives, if you have a worm or if you have a virus on a USB drive, people are naturally curious. They're going to want to pick up the USB drive and plug it in and see what's on it. If it's a worm, it'll fire on its own. If it's an executable, someone's going to double click it. Probably me, because I want to see what the malware is. But In all seriousness, people do like opening stuff to just see what's there. We're naturally curious. It's just a part of our psyche, and it's a distribution method. I don't know how widely used it is. It's definitely not typically used in a targeted attack, because you can't guarantee that your target's going to pick up that USB, right? This is more of an attack of opportunity, just getting whatever you get. Phishing emails. We have all received a phishing email in our life at this point. If you haven't received a phishing email, then you've received phishing through a voice call. You've received smishing through a text message, pig butchering, where somebody tries to say, hey, I left my clubs in your car, and you're like, what? I don't know anybody that plays golf. And they're like, oh, my name's Janice. What's yours? And they start to try and get information on you. Old Janice trying to leave her clubs in my car. But you can have spear phishing, which is like highly targeted phishing. You have normal phishing, which is just send an email that someone may click on. Spear phishing would be if you did a lot of recon, you might send an email to a very specific person that looks super legitimate because you know what they expect in their email and they're going to click on it. All right, so what is the name of the attack? When it is performed against a specific group of people, the attacker seeks to infect a website. That is your watering hole attack. All right, let's go on to exploitation. To gain access to a system, an attacker needs to exploit a vulnerability. In this phase, Megatron gets a little bit creative. They create 2 phishing emails containing a phishing link to a fake 365 login page, another one containing a macro attachment that would execute ransomware when the victim opens it. They deliver their exploits, and 2 victims click on the malicious link. After gaining access to the system, the malicious actor could exploit software, system, or server-based vulnerabilities to escalate privileges and move laterally through the network. According to CrowdStrike, lateral movement refers to the techniques a malicious actor would use after gaining initial access to the victim machine to move deeper into the network to obtain sensitive data. Right? So lateral movement, pretty simple, right? You land on a box, you land on a machine, you don't really know where you are, you run who am I, you see that you are Jane Smith in accounting, and you're like, oh, that's pretty neat. And you go to access their files and you see, uh-oh, they don't actually have too much access to anything. Maybe you escalate your privileges and you still can't get too much. So you go, hey, I want to find the database server where all their juicy intellectual property is, and you perform what is known as lateral movement, where you would probably start by scanning. You know, we brought up that Microsoft kill chain earlier. We can see that internal recon happens, local privilege escalation, compromise creds, admin recon, remote code execution. You know, and this all happens over and over and over again, right? You would scan, see if there's something maybe you can easily exploit so you could pivot quick, or you try and you be a little stealthier, a little slower, and you scan and you're trying to find the database. Maybe you're trying to find the domain controller. Maybe you're trying to find whatever, right? Depends on your objective again. So it's you can either be targeted or you can just keep moving until you land where you want to land. And that's kind of why I like the Microsoft kill chain, because it shows that iterative process, right? You're gonna land on a box, you scan, you're like, okay, I don't see much. You get admin creds, you do whatever you're gonna do there, you scan again, you find another device of interest, you exploit and move over there, right? And then you do it all over again. So Tryhackme Room, OWASP Top 10. OWASP is a pretty great resource about learning what the top vulnerabilities on web apps are. Server-based, apparently they have information about that too. I've always known them for web-based vulnerabilities. Attacker might apply a zero-day exploit, which is just, again, an exploit that hasn't been patched. We talked about this in the past. This is a big, long blurb about all that. There are examples of how an attacker carries out exploitation. They can trigger the exploit by opening the email attachment. They can use a 0 day. So, right, maybe the attacker's on the box, and they they see that there's a vulnerability that hasn't been patched, and they run whatever exploit code they have, and they do it that way. Exploit software, hardware, or even human vulnerabilities, right? MGM, that was social engineering 100% of the way. They were given an admin account just by asking, basically. An attacker triggers the exploit for server-based vulnerabilities. That's the same thing we were kind of talking about with that 0-day exploit. Falls into the same thing. Maybe if it's not a 0-day, it's a day. It's a end day that has been patched. An end day meaning, you know, X amount of days since patch release. It's just an end day. I just call them vulnerabilities that have patches. So if a attacker sees a vulnerability, they're going to exploit it. Can you provide the name for a cyber attack targeting a software vulnerability? That's just an exploit, right? Oh no, they want that is unknown to antivirus or software. See, this is why we read all the way. 0-day installation. This is where we're going to get persistence. So persistence, an attacker is not going to want to just be in an environment once, right? They might want to come back over the time of days. They might want to come back over months, right? They might want to come back over years, and they're going to sorry, there was an active conversation happening over in the bottom of my screen. They're going to want to come back so they can get more data exfil. Maybe they have a new objective that they thought of. They're going to install a backdoor, okay? Installing a persistent backdoor. Persistence will let the attacker access the system they compromised in the past. You can check out the persistence room to get for some more information. There are a lot of different ways you can make a web shell. PHP, ASP, ASPX, JSP, Etsy, etc. can be difficult to detect and might be classified as benign. Yeah, this is traffic that could go undetected. Great ways of detecting web shells is just by looking for that unusual timing, right? There's a timing aspect with it. You know, a lot of backdoors have what we call a heartbeat, which is, again, this goes into your like C2, your command and control, that is, where there's a heartbeat established, right? Where it calls out every so often. It's like, hey, any new commands? Hey, are you trying to connect? Hey, what's going on? This might happen every 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours, you know, whatever. Installing a backdoor on the victim machine. They can use an interpreter to make a backdoor. That's probably going to get picked up by most things because, you know, Metasploit's pretty well known. Doesn't mean it's going to get detected by all of the things. And if you have whatever thing not tuned correctly, you may not detect it at all. All right. Interpreter gives an interactive shell from which the attacker can interact with the victim machine remotely and execute code. So that's more of that. Again, shells are your kind of command and control, your backdoor, your persistence. It's going to launch every time you start your machine, and it's going to be ready for you to send commands to it. Creating or modifying Windows services. You get a nice MITRE technique right here. We talked about MITRE before, the MITRE attack framework. It goes through the different techniques and tactics that an attacker may use. It restates that right here. Knowledge base of adversary techniques based on real-world scenarios. Attacker may modify a Windows service to execute malicious scripts or payloads. You'll see that a lot with scheduled tasks, new services being created. There are plenty of ways. What is it called? I'm blanking. I'm blanking hard for no reason. Carl's Coffee Shop. Yeah, absolutely. That was back for the watering hole attack. I just hadn't seen it. I can't think of the name of the file, and that is going to bug me. The auto run file. You know, every time you boot up your computer, it runs from that folder. Using tools like sc.exe, which is your Windows service, and registry or in reg to modify service configurations. They can also masquerade malicious payload by using a service name that is known to the operating system or legitimate software. Yeah, absolutely. You can hide your persistence mechanisms just by naming it to look like a service that you expect to run all of the time. Adding the entry to the run keys. Oh, you know, that's it. The run keys for the malicious payload in the registry or startup folder. That's the folder I was trying to think of. Duh, startup folder. By doing that, the payload will execute every time someone logs in. And according to the MITRE attack, there's the startup folder location for the individual user accounts and a system-wide startup folder. That is true. So it will be checked every time, no matter what user account logs in. So just because you may have only compromised Susan, if you put it in the machine-wide startup folder, you know, Johnny logs in and you've got your shell, even when they're logged in. You can read more about registry run keys, startup folders on the techniques, and they can use time stomping. Time stopping being a pretty interesting tactic to avoid detection by any investigators and make it look legitimate. Time stomping techniques lets an attacker modify the timestamps, including modify, access, create, and change time. So you can use time stomping to like make a file appear as though it was installed 2 years ago. So, right, you're investigating an event that's going on now, and you see a service created 2 years ago. You're like, oh, whatever, right? You know, you see an executable created 2 years ago. That has nothing to do with it right now. You just disregard it. Obviously, you shouldn't, but a lot of people do. And that's what time stomping hopes to achieve. Can you provide the technique used to modify? That's time stomping. So, use to modify file time attributes, hide new or changes to existing files. That's time stomping. Can you name the malicious script planted by an attacker on the web server to maintain access to the compromised system and enables the web server to be accessed remotely? That's our web shell. All right, command and control kind of builds on this last installation phase. After getting persistence and executing malware on the machine, they're going to open up the C2 channel. That command and control, by the way, C2, through the malware to remotely control and manipulate the victim. This is actually where that persistence mechanism comes into. A lot of your times, your persistence is done in the form of a shell. So you're going to use that shell to run commands, and it will be your C2. Now, can you do more advanced C2s like Cobalt Strike and whatnot? Absolutely. All right. The term is known as command and control, or C2 beaconing, as a type of malicious communication between a C2 server and malware on the infected host. The infected host will consistently communicate with the C2 server. That is also where the beaconing comes from. We talked about it, right? It checks in like every 5 minutes. Like, oh, any new commands? No. All right. Are you trying to remote in? No. Okay. Next 5 minutes. Any new commands? No? All right. And that's it. It's that constant heartbeat of just, you'll see it. If you ever see a C2 on Wireshark, it's almost obvious unless it's super stealthy. And there's ways you could randomize heartbeats. It doesn't have to be consistent. You can have it happen 1 second, 3 seconds, 10 minutes, 5 hours, right? It doesn't have to be the same amount of time. But if you see one that does do the standard heartbeat, you can see that traffic just come out every 5 minutes. Like, you'll see it 3:05, 3:10, 3:15. You know, it's a pattern. It's set to do this. Common C2 channels used by adversaries nowadays: HTTP, HTTPS on port 80 and port 43, and then DNS. There's a lot of C2 through DNS. Infected machine makes constant DNS requests to the DNS server that belongs to an attacker. So if you see DNS traffic going towards an unapproved DNS server, probably not a good thing. That is known as DNS tunneling. All right. So they can use this command and control, the C2, to execute their commands that they want, right? If they're trying to exfil data, the C2, they'll be able to use their C2 to do so. If they're trying to pivot, they're going to be able to use the C2 to do so. If they want to install more persistence, they're going to be able to do so, right? So on and so forth. What is the C2 communication? Where the victim makes regular DNS requests to a DNS server and a domain which belong to the attacker. That's that DNS tunneling we just talked about. All right, actions on objectives, also known as exfiltration sometimes. Actions on objectives, again, it is going to vary on attacker to attacker. It doesn't have to be exfiltration. You can attack and not exfil. Now, most of the time, is it going to be exfiltration? Absolutely. Ransomware actors started with just ransomware. I'm sure there were some that started with ransomware and exfiltration, but they figured out, hey, why just ransomware someone and have them pay for a key to unlock the environment when you can ransomware someone after stealing their data and then make you pay us for, or make them pay us for deleting their data. Now we get paid twice. This is known as double extortion, right? And there's some that do triple extortion where they're like, hey, not only did we ransomware you and we're gonna sell your data, but we're gonna come back because we know how to get in, or you know, whatever phase 3 exploit they have, like, oh, we still have the data, we didn't actually delete it, you should pay us again. Depends on actor, right? But your double extortion commonly is usually that data exfil plus the ransomware. What's going on, Luke? Even Luke found the secret channel. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with YouTube. What's going on, Luke and Chris both? Welcome. I have no idea if YouTube has me like shadow banned or something. I found myself in a search on a few different platforms, a few different in privates and, you know, incognitos. I was able to find myself. I think Jerry's just smoking rocks. After going through the 6 phases of attack, Megatron can finally achieve their goals, which means taking actions on whatever objectives they have. They can achieve the following: collect credentials, perform privilege escalation, remove internal reconnaissance, lateral movement, collect and exfiltrate data, deleting backups and shadow copies. Shadow copies are pretty cool, by the way. If you're ever in an incident and you don't have a backup, you may have shadow copies if the attacker didn't get rid of them. But shadow copy is a Microsoft technology that creates backup copies, snapshots, volumes of the computer files or the volumes. They're basically like soft backups, or they may overwrite and corrupt data, right? It's that DAD triad. If you know the CIA triad, the confidence, integrity, and availability triad, the DAD is like destroy, alter, and deny. Yeah, that's it. Destroy, alter, and deny. Where it's the absolute opposite, right? If you have integrity, is it destroy? That sounds right. I don't know why that, like, I'm starting to question myself. Let's see, DAD triad. Disclosure, alteration, and destruction. That's it. You don't really hear about the DAD triad very often, but it is the opposite of the CIA triad, right? Where you have confidentiality, you're going to be disclosing information. Where you have integrity, which is supposed to be that data doesn't change, you'll have alteration. And where you have availability, you'll have destruction, which I call deny. All right. Again, so you see that they have these different things that aren't just data exfiltration here, and this is kind of where I was talking like, hey, it's more of a loop. Just, it does have a looping feature where they're going to perform more reconnaissance. So you go back to this phase, they're going to go lateral movement, which kind of plays against the, you know, it plays against all of these phases. You have collect and exfiltrate data, which is an action on objective. Destruction isn't an action on objective. Those are all very much in that final phase. Can you provide a technology included in Microsoft Windows that can create backup copies or snapshots of files? That is that shadow copy. Practice analysis. So now, this is where we get to actually put the pedal down, put the car in drive, and practice what we just went over. I thought this room was going to go faster, so I did have the unified kill chain queued up. I'm still going to do it because I said I would. But we might have to hurry through that one a little more. Alright, December 19th, 2013. Target released a statement confirming that they got breached. Yeah, that was a big one. That was where third-party risk got realized. Give me one moment, I'm about to sneeze. Alright, so third-party risk was realized with with the target attack. They got hacked through an HVAC company, if I remember correctly, right? Deploy the static site. We're going to add each item on the list to the correct kill chain entry form on the static site. So we can go ahead and hit this view site button. It'll pop up a nice little static website for us. And I'm guessing this wants us to... Okay, so we're going to take these different items and just throw them on the kill chain here. Alright, so we can go through, add each item on the list to the entry form. So we have exploit public facing application. That's going to be in the exploit phase. Data from local system. I'm assuming that means that they were exfilling, I guess. PowerShell, probably going to be their C2 or their persistence mechanism, depending on how they used it. Spear phishing attachment is going to be that delivery mechanism, and fallback channels, which that's kind of vague. Fallback channels? Is that their persistence? I'm assuming that's their persistence. Is that their installation phase? So, oh, and dynamic linker hijacking. I'm not too positive as to what a dynamic linker hijacking is. Maybe dynamic link hijacking? I don't know. So let's go ahead and do what we do know, right? We have exploit public facing application. Well, that sounds like it's in the exploit phase to me. So we have reconnaissance, weaponized delivery, exploitation, reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, exploitation. So exploit public, I'm sure we have to probably letter for letter for this. Facing application. Alright, our delivery mechanism was that spear phishing attachment. Alright, that weaponization, I'm not too positive quite yet, so we'll move on, right? So we have exploitation. What's after exploitation? We have installation. Installation is going to be our persistence mechanism. Maybe that fallback channel. I don't know. They don't give you a lot of context. Then we have our command and control right here. That would probably be our PowerShell, maybe? I mean, I've seen PowerShell used for command and control before, but they're not being very specific as to what they're doing with PowerShell, so. Alright. And then we have our action on objective, which was that data from local system, which I assume they mean exfilling data from the local system. Which just leaves us with that one that we didn't have, which was that dynamic linker hijacking. At least one of my answers is incorrect. That would be the PowerShell. Oh, wow. So I think the red ones are wrong. So I got half of them wrong, it seems. Would that be like QR code hijacking? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they're using it for... I'm not sure how they're using it. They don't really give it a lot of context. So let's try swapping... Try swapping... Let's check it. Oh yeah, wrong answers are underlined in red. So let's try swapping, I guess, PowerShell, and the dynamic linker hijacking. If I got 3 of them wrong. What? Now, how would I get 3 wrong? Wouldn't I have had to have, well, unless they were all in the wrong spot, I guess. So we can check that. So PowerShell is now in the right spot. So fallback channels is where that dynamic linker hijacking is. So I guess they're saying that the command and control was done through fallback channels. I'm not sure what a fallback channel is, to be quite frank. So again, these are kind of vague. So fallback channel, and then we had to get that dynamic linker hijacking, and we'll throw that in our installation. Check our answer, and we get our flag. Threat intel is awesome. If it would let me copy it, that'd be great. You know what? That is close enough. Alright, we get that threat intel is awesome in our leet speak, and that is the room. They give us a conclusion that kind of goes over everything, talking about TTPs, when the kill chain was invented, you know, just a review of everything we've done. We can complete it. We've officially completed this room. So, with that done, we can do the unified kill chain, which I was going to do on the same day because I thought that other room would be a little shorter, because this seems like basically a review on what we just did. Alright, so unified kill chain, understanding the behaviors, objectives, methodologies of a cyber threat. Alright, this is kind of just reviewing what we talked about with the cyber kill chain. If we know where they're going, what they've done, why they're doing it, then we're going to be able to defend better. Known as the cybersecurity posture. In this room, we will be introduced to the UKC, also known as the Unified Kill Chain, that helps us understand how cyber attacks occur. Understanding why frameworks, such as, okay, this is just learning objectives, cool. What is the kill chain? We just talked about the kill chain, so I'm not going to actually review that because, again, we did just talk about it. It is the actions in order, or actions that an adversary may take when trying to compromise an environment or trying to achieve their actions on an objective. Okay, the objective is to understand an attacker's kill chain so that defensive measures may be put in place to either preemptively protect a system or disrupt an attacker's attempt. Where does the term kill chain originate from? I'm assuming they want us to say military, because that is something they harped on, originating from the military. Alright, what is threat modeling? This is an interesting one. Threat modeling is a cybersecurity context, is a series of steps to ultimately improve the security of a system. Threat modeling is about identifying risk and essentially boils down to identifying what systems and applications need to be secured and what function they serve in the environment. Assessing what vulnerabilities and weaknesses these systems and applications may have and how they could be exploited. Creating a plan of action to secure these environments and applications from the vulnerabilities highlighted, and putting in policies to prevent the vulnerabilities from occurring ever again where possible. For example, implementing an SDLC, or software development lifecycle, for an application, or training employees on phishing awareness. Right? So this sounds pretty blue team, right? Wrong. That is a GRC function, the threat modeling. You look at the overall risk of an environment, you take into account devices, your software, your threat landscape in general. Think about what attackers may be doing, what you have that could be exploited, the human, the technology, and you create a plan to remediate these vulnerabilities to the best of your ability. Right? You can't patch everything. You may have a line of business device that cannot be patched for whatever reason. Maybe it requires something that gets removed in a patch. Maybe patching it will make it never work again. There's plenty of reasons not to patch something, so you would put a compensating control in around the device so that it can be protected from exploit. So, threat modeling, important to reducing the risk within a system or an application, as it creates a high-level overview of an organization's IT assets as in software and hardware, and procedures to resolve those vulnerabilities. Right? That's pretty much your POAM, your plan of action and milestones. The UKC can encourage threat modeling, as UKC framework helps identify potential attack surfaces. Stride, Dread, and CVSS are all frameworks specifically used in threat modeling. I know I use CVSS all the time. Stride and Dread, a little less. If you are interested in learning more, you can check out the Principles of Security Room. What is the technical term for a piece of software or hardware in IT? Asset. That is an asset. Now, if you ever want to start a fight and you're at a conference and, you know, people have had a drink or two and people are starting to wind down, you have two CISOs in a room, have them define an asset and just wait for them to start arguing. Many people say that assets are just the technology and hardware. Many people like to believe that assets are also the people. I tend to agree that I tend to agree that people are assets as well, because, you know, you can have vulnerabilities in humans. Like, if they aren't trained to understand what phishing is, then they are just going to click on every link they see if they are interested, right? So you need to educate your end users, right? Educate your end users, make sure they're up to date on what's going on. You have to trust them. You have to be able to trust them, and by doing so, you have to work with them, right? You can't just put security in place and expect them to not do things. Never berate them, never be upset with, never be visibly upset with them. You can be annoyed with them. I mean, that's going to happen, right? That's natural. But just, you know, calling them names and telling them that they did dumb stuff is not going to help them not do it again. To continue from the previous task, the UKC, published in 2017, aims to complement, not compete, with other kill chain frameworks such as Lockheed. UK states that there are 18 phases to an attack. Everything from reconnaissance to exfiltration, understanding an attacker's motives. 18 phases. I don't think I have a mnemonic long enough for that one. Some larger benefits of the UKC over traditional cybersecurity frameworks include the fact that it's modern and extremely detailed. Yeah, there's 18 phases. I would call that extremely detailed. So, let's go through the 18 phases. All right, we see a few of them, right? Reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery. We recognize those ones. Social engineering, exploitation, persistence, defense evasion, command and control, pivoting, discovery, privilege execution, credential access, lateral movement, collection, exfiltration, impact, and objectives. Say that one 5 times fast. So, what year was the kill chain framework released? We saw that up top, 2017. According to the UKC, how many phases are there to an attack? 18. Probably won't forget that one because it's kind of absurd. What is the name of the attack phase where an attacker employs techniques to evade detection? That is probably going to be in our defense evasion phase. Techniques an attacker may specifically use for evading detection. Yep. So they called that defense evasion specifically. What is the name of the attack phase where an attacker employs techniques to remove data from a network? That is going to be our... Let's see, what do we have here? Exfiltration, techniques that result or aid in an attacker removing data from a target network. I almost thought they were going for a counter forensics standpoint. Exfiltration. Why am I not spelling it right? Exfiltration. Yeah, no, I had it right the first time. Apparently I don't. Can I just copy it? Because I can't spell apparently? Nope. Yeah, that's spelled right. Why do they not like it? I think that's exactly what I just typed, but, you know, hey, sometimes things like to get funky. Maybe I had some white space in there. I don't know. What was the name of the attack phase where an attacker achieves their objectives? objectives. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Remember we talked about that actions on objective? That's that objective phase. So phase in, getting your foothold. Oh, ooh, like this. So this is, it is cyclical. Like we kind of talked about this, right? It is more of a cyclical process. This is basically just the normal kill chain with a couple things added in. The social engineering, the defense evasion, and the pivoting are all new. Oh, and persistence, that wasn't there either. That was just called installation. So the main focus of this series of phases for an attacker is to gain access, also known as establishing a foothold. They will employ numerous tactics to investigate the system. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit before, right? You know, they're going to scan, they're going to try and find more vulnerabilities, using reconnaissance against the system to discover potential attack vectors, right? That's that scan I was just talking about. This series of phases also accommodates for an attacker creating a form of persistence. Those backdoors we talked about, you have reconnaissance, MITRE technique TA0043. We talked about reconnaissance, weaponization we talked about as well. Setting up a command and control server, getting a system capable of listening for reverse shells, delivering payloads to the system. Social engineering. If you haven't heard of social engineering, it is basically getting people to do what you want in a malicious manner. That's the way you can boil it down to its barest of bones. Techniques that an adversary employs to manipulate employees to perform actions that will aid in adversarial attack, such as getting a user to open a malicious attachment, right? If you pretext well enough, pretexting being writing an email that says, hey, it's Bob from IT. Carl, can you please download this so we can perform a vulnerability scan on your thing for compliance? You know, blah, blah, blah. This is from the CEO, yada, yada, yada. That's your pretexting. Impersonating a web page or having the user enter their credentials, right? If you've ever seen a login page before for Microsoft, people clone that all the time. And they will use it to have you enter your credentials, right? You're used to it popping up. You're like, oh, I need to log in. Cool, whatever. You throw in your credentials. It redirects you to where you were trying to go. And now they have your credentials. Calling or visiting the target by an impersonating user. For example, requesting password reset. Kind of what we were talking about with that MGM attack. If you haven't seen the MGM casino attack, definitely research that. It's a pretty interesting attack where... Scattered Spire social engineered their way into admin credentials, right? And this is something that actually happens, being able to gain access to an area of a site because they have a clipboard and a high-vis vest. I mean, this actually happens. Exploitation we talked about, uploading and executing reverse shells, interfering with an automated script, abusing a web app vulnerability to execute code, persistence, that's our backdoors, adding target system to CNC or C2 server networks where commands can be executed, leaving other forms of backdoors, defense evasion. This is our counter forensics, right? Where we may be trying to get around web application firewalls, get around network firewalls, maybe through encrypting traffic or having the server call out to us, right? If you have a firewall that's set up to not allow traffic inbound, but you allow all traffic out, then you can have malware that gets on a device and calls home instead of you calling into it. That's called a reverse shell, where you get a device to execute that for you, so it just calls to you. Antivirus systems on the target machine, intrusion detection systems. These are all things that people are going to want to avoid when trying to hack their way through an environment. Command and control, that is where we are executing commands, stealing data, credentials, other information with our C2 malware. And then pivoting. Pivoting is a very vital phase. It is a technique where an adversary uses to reach other systems within the network that are not otherwise accessible. So once they're internal, they can pivot. They can go to an internal database server, the AD server, whatever it may be. Like, it's not normally accessible through the internet, but because now they're internal, they can do that. All right. Tactic to gain a foothold using emails is phishing. Impersonating an employee to request a password reset. That is social engineering. Check chat. What's going on, Tyler? Oh, yeah. Thanks for dropping by, and thanks for saying keep up the good work. It's been a great time. All right, adversary setting up a C2 server infrastructure. That is going to be that's our. Oh, they're setting up the server infrastructure. That's weaponization. I almost made a snarky remark that it was in the name, but I would have been wrong. Weaponization. Exploiting a vulnerability present on a system is what phase is the UKC. That is your exploitation. Moving from one system to another is pivoting, also known as lateral movement. Leaving behind a malicious service that allows the adversary to log back in to the target is persistence. All right. We have our next phase. So you have phase in. That was all these steps. You have phase through, which is the pivoting and more discovery, privilege escalation, execution, credential access, lateral movement, and access. So I guess, okay, they're defining pivoting as going from an external resource to an internal resource exclusively. So I'm assuming that lateral movement is going to be from internal to internal, or just from device to device in general. So pivoting. We just talked about this. Discovery. They can uncover information about the system and the network it's connected to. Their knowledge base is going to be built from the active user accounts, permissions granted, application, software in use, web browser activity, files, directories, network shares, system configurations, you name it. If they can get their grubby little hands on it, they're going to want to figure out what's going on in the network. I'm talking to you, Tyler Ramsey, Mr. Network Penetration Tester, getting your hands on all the data, trying to make your way to the active domain controller. Or the Active Directory controller, domain controller. I mushed both of those terms together. It's a new term for me. Privilege escalation, going from 0 to hero, right? You want that system in root. That's the golden key, basically, outside of having a ticket, granting ticket in a Kerberos environment. Really, it would be domain admin that you could do pretty much anything, but system and root is golden key on a local machine. All right, they want more, they want better permissions. They want to be able to execute more stuff. You know, if Carl, old Carl, doesn't have very many permissions, well, they don't want to be Carl. They want to be system. They want to be root. They want to be local admin. They want to be whatever user has admin, because they want to be able to install their malicious services. They're wanting to make changes and exfiltrate data and look at more information. Not quite, Luke. Not quite. Tech Ricky, pivot. Absolutely. Just don't break the couch. Credential access. Dumping creds, right? That's pretty self-explanatory. They're going to want to get their hands on other people's credentials, especially admin credentials, so that they can perform whatever they need. No, they brought execution back in here, apparently. Oh, no, that was exploitation earlier. Execution is different now. So this is where they're deploying their remote Trojan C2 scripts, links, scheduled tasks for persistence, whatever else it may be. Lateral movement. All right, so what's the difference between pivoting and lateral movement? I am genuinely curious. With credentials and elevated privileges, they're going to seek through to move through the network. So that sounds like what I thought the difference was going to be. Pivoting coming from the outside in, lateral movement from inside to more inside. As a SOC analyst, you pick up numerous alerts pointing to failed login attempts from an administrator account. What stage of the kill chain would they be, and would an attacker be seeking to achieve? Credential access, right? That's just a brute force attack. It's one way of accessing credentials, just trying credentials. That's wrong. Uh-oh. Are they gonna? Are they considering this privilege escalation because they're going specifically for the admin? Escalation. Alright, yep. They were considering a privilege escalation because they're going for the administrator account. Mimikatz. That's credential access. A known attack tool was detected running on the IT manager's computer. What is the mission of the tool? Mimikatz is a credential dumping tool. Credential access. Don't prove me wrong twice. What do you mean? No. No, not twice. Did I spell something wrong? Oh no. I'm a fool. I'm a fool. Mimikatz is a cred dumping tool though. Was detected running on the IT manager's computer. Are they going to call this privilege escalation again? That'd be funny. Credential. Oh, maybe they want credential dumping specifically. They did. They wanted credential dumping specifically. They weren't looking for the attack phase. They were saying, what is the tool doing? Credential dumping. So, right but wrong. All right, phase out. This is the last set of phases. I would like to return the couch. Did you break the couch, Luke? You know you can't return the couch if you broke the couch. It's not how this works. It's a good episode. I like that episode. So, final phase. Phase out. Collection. After hunting for all access... I don't know why this one's randomly in bold. After hunting for access and assets, the adversary will seek to gather all the valuable data of interest. This turns into the compromise of confidentiality. The data and would lead to the next stage of the next attack stage, exfiltration. So you got to collect the data, put it into a tar ball, put it into a zip, do whatever you're going to do with it before you exfiltrate it. To elevate their compromise, they're going to steal the data, which would be packaged using encryption methods to avoid and compression to avoid detection. Yeah, typically. I mean, it depends on how bold the adversary is. They might just exfil it byte for byte instead of compressing it or zipping it or doing whatever else they're wanting to do. I've definitely seen that before, where somebody just takes 200 gigs of data and runs. If they've got enough throughput, why not? They can be out before you can do anything. In a more advanced environment, then you might get stopped, and that's where you're going to want to compress more. And right, you're going to use information you found earlier to figure out whether or not you want to compress. But if you're trying to be stealthy, then you're going to want to be compressing data and zipping it and doing whatever else you want to do with it. Encryption measures, maybe you establish a tunnel so it's a little less obvious. Impact. If the adversary seeks to compromise the integrity or and availability of the data assets, they would manipulate, interrupt, or destroy the assets. So disrupt business and operational processes. That may involve removing account access, disk wipes, data encryption with ransomware or such as ransomware, defacement and denial of service attacks. Right, this is kind of that action on objective, right? In objectives, with all the power and access to the system and network, the adversary would seek to achieve their strategic goal for the attack, which is kind of a part of everything else-ish, right? They're all kind of in the same objective phase-ish. In other instances, attacker, okay, they may encrypt it. Okay, I see how they're defining objectives here. They may encrypt files with ransomware and ask for payment. They may be trying to damage the reputation of the business just by dumping everything. That's where they're defining. That's the difference between objective and everything else, right? What they do next. Are they going to extort you? Are they going to just dump your data? That's the objectives phase. When monitoring the network as a SOC analyst, you realize there is a spike in network activity. That's probably your exfiltration. And all of the traffic is outbound to an unknown IP address. What stage could this describe? That's your exfiltration, more than likely. Please don't let me be wrong another time. Or be able to spell. Every time. I'm gonna copy and paste it this time. Can't stop me. Yep, I'm spelling it wrong somehow. I'm gonna go back and watch it and slap myself on the forehead. I'm sure just a big old face palm of how I can't spell exfiltration today. Personally identifiable information, also known as PII, has been released to the public by an adversary. Your organization is facing scrutiny on for the breach. What part of the CIA triad would be affected by that? That's your confidentiality. Right? Because your goal, you have 3 goals, right? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. Availability is uptime. Integrity is making sure that data is not altered. Confidentiality is keeping secret stuff secret. That's the easiest way to break that down. What's going on, LSEC? What's going on, Luke? You'll take the store credit. Fair enough. Okay, you can have store credit. We have 2 Lukes in chat now. You have to fight for who's the better Luke. Practical. Hopefully this one's a little easier than the other one where it was extremely vague. Deploy the static site attached to the task. You will need to match various actions of an attacker to the correct phase of the unified kill chain framework to reveal the flag. An attacker uses tools to gather information about a system. It's your reconnaissance phase. The attacker installs a malicious script to allow them to remote access at a later date. That's our persistence. The hacked machine is being controlled from an attacker's server. That is your command and control. The attacker uses the hacked machine to access other systems on the same network. That is our pivoting. The attacker steals a database and sells it to a third party. Probably your actions and objective. Yep. And we get our flag. UKC scenario. Alright. And with that, we wrapped up to the UKC room. Talked a little bit about threat modeling. UKC is pretty intense. 18 phases, that's a lot to remember. As I said earlier, I can't make up a mnemonic that long. I'm sure AI probably could. That'd be interesting. I think I like UKC more than the normal kill chain because it does talk about what kind of happens in an attack at greater detail, which is good. I like that. I think that the kill chain is a little too vague, and the nice part, the benefit of these kill chains is that one action can kind of fall on multiple phases, and that can really help you get a feel for where you may be detecting something, right? If you're seeing this persistence mechanism, then you know they've already probably done recon, they've probably done etc, etc, etc. And this may not be the first device they've done it on, right? As mentioned in this room, it is an extension of other frameworks. If you are interested in learning more about the other frameworks, you can check out the other rooms. Click finish and we get our second badge. And I think that is where we're going to call it for today. I'll go ahead and make sure we don't have any questions to wrap up. We got Team Luke in chat. Hashtag Team Luke. All right. I don't think we have any immediate questions. I'll hold for 5. But if I don't see anything, then I'm going to go ahead and call it earlier, because that was a lot, and I did not bring a water up here, which was a big mistake. Because now I'm thirsty. That was a lot of talking. Good rooms overall. I think the cyber kill chain room was a little vague. Not because like the drop down tabs were vague. The drop down tabs great. It was the practical that was oddly vague. I did like the UKC room a lot better. I think that one was nice. Do I have a schedule for these streams? I do. I haven't really... I've done a bad job of advertising my own channel. Like, I put work into this channel, and I do a horrible job of scheduling these. It's Mondays at 5 Eastern Standard Time. I know it is a bad time for most, but that's just the time slot I have available. So every Monday at 5 Eastern Time, we can meet back up and work on another Tryhackme Room or Hack the Box Room, whatever it may be. No, it's not ad hoc. It is definitely planned. I have to. I have too much stuff going on right now. I couldn't just ad hoc it. Now, in the future, I know there's going to be like meta CTFs and whatnot that Simply Cyber wants to push, and they want to get people involved. I'm probably going to stream my meta CTF. That's going to be ad hoc. It won't be any planning, just kind of like boot up on a Saturday and be like, come on, let's go hack the Gibson. But for the most part, it will be Mondays at 5 Eastern Standard. I'm working on some more graphics and whatnot to make that a little more evident. I'm going to edit the channel a little bit to make that more evident. And I'm going to post on LinkedIn, which I've been putting off doing. Not for any particular reason. I'm just not a very big social media person. Even me doing this is a little out of my comfort zone, but that's kind of why I wanted to do it, because it's out of my comfort zone. And being uncomfortable means that I'm growing. So we can, I will be back next Monday, 5 Eastern Standard Time. The only exceptions, I found I need a lot of help with CTFs. Yeah, me too. I'm sure everybody does. They're not easy for a reason. They are, I like them. There's some things that I can do easier than other things. Are you announcing ad hoc in SC Discord? No, yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely going to be announcing SC Discord. I'm not making my own Discord channel. I don't see a need for that. I'm so ingrained with the Simply Cyber and Black Hills information security communities that I consider them, those are like my communities. Those are the ones that I would want my channel to be represented in. I don't see a need for my own. Good question, though. Thank you for asking. Also, Luke, good question on the schedule. I wish it was a little more clear, and I'm going to make sure I work to make that so. Oh, thank you, Ricky. I appreciate that. It means a lot. Seriously. It's not easy, right? It's not easy at all. Even finding a time slot took me like 2 months because there was just so much happening that I was like, I don't know when I have an hour, 2 hours to just sit down and do this, right? And that's a big struggle for some people. And I mean, getting the stream set up, it's not too bad, right? But just committing, making sure you come back every week's the hard part. No, I'm on YouTube only. No Twitch, YouTube only, unfortunately. I did Twitch for a while in the past. It just never stuck for me. I see the value of Twitch and whatnot, but I think I'm just gonna stick to YouTube for simplicity's sake. Plus, a lot of streaming platforms or ways that I think you can do it for free on OBS. I'd have to dig into it, but a lot of people, like, there's a lot of things that make you pay for streaming to more than one platform, and that kind of sucks. That stinks. But OBS might let you do it for free. 24 hours in a day is never enough. No, it is not. No, it is not. Sometimes I wish I could make 48 hours in a day, but then I would just fill the other 24. All right. Well, y'all, thank you so much for joining. I will see you next Monday at 5 Eastern Standard Time. I think this was a great look into the attack lifecycle, the 2 different chains we looked at. I learned about UKC, which was pretty cool. And I think when I start recommending the kill chain to people, I'm going to be looking at that unified kill chain instead of the normal one. I need a Discord. I have a Discord. I'm not making my own channel. But thank you, everybody, and take care until next time. As well, Ken said, oh, good night.